Welcome everybody to Expert Academy live streams. If you tuned into one of our earlier sessions, thank you very much for that. And if you want to check out any of the other episodes, please go ahead and do so on this channel or on the on-demand platform that we have. My name is Svevo and I'm an account manager working for the Dutch market here in our Dublin office where we are today. And today the topic is going to be omnichannel bidding. And I have two specialists with me for that. So joining me on this cozy couch are Katarina and Nima. Would you please introduce yourselves?
Yeah, I can kick off. Hi everyone, my name is Katarina. I work as an omnichannel specialist for both the Benelux as well as the Scandinavian markets. And as you might hear from my accent, I'm originally from the Netherlands.
Cool. And my name is Nima, and I work for Northern Europe as a search specialist, primarily focusing on smart bidding and performance optimization.
All right, perfect. Thank you very much. So before we get started, please know that you can ask questions live during this session. So please do so below the video and the questions will be answered by our specialists who are in the room today. So please go ahead and do so if you want. And with that, that's actually all the practical information from my side, which means that we can kick off and go right to the content. And for that, I'll hand it over to you two to take us through.
Perfect. So first of all, I'm gonna talk about why omnichannel is so important, and then we're gonna discuss more about omnichannel bidding. But as you know, performance marketing used to be all about one thing, just about optimizing your sales or your leads online. However, reality looks different. We know that 90% of shopping still happens in the store. And we also know that most of the transactions that are happening in the store are influenced by a digital touchpoint. And in 2020, it is expected that 90% of all transactions happening in stores are influenced by a digital touchpoint. So it's very important to not only look at your online conversions, but also take the offline conversions into consideration. We also see that omnichannel customers are actually worth more. So we know that in store, omnichannel customers tend to spend 4% more on average. And online, they actually tend to spend 10% more than compared to single channel customers. So it's really interesting to actually focus on those omnichannel clients. So not only because that's the behavior of the people, they don't only buy online but also offline, but also because these clients are worth more. So as you know, we're able to connect a store visit with a digital ad click in both search as well as search ads 360. And therefore, we're able to actually set an omnichannel ROAS. So you know exactly this was your digital budget, and that resulted into X amount of online conversions and X amount of offline store visits. So in that way, you're able to value all customer touch points and really focus and optimize towards an omnichannel return on ad spend. However, from Google's perspective, we always were great in using automatic bidding solutions for online conversions, but we were never really able to actually take that store visit data into consideration as well. And now for the very first time, it's like launched since a week now, so I'm very, very excited about that. We're able to really focus on optimizing towards an omnichannel return on ad spend and really take that store visit data into consideration in our bidding algorithms. Because this is very important because there are so many signals where you can optimize towards, and it's very difficult to do this in a manual manner. So now it's very interesting that we can do this in with our bidding algorithms. So now we'll actually hand over to our automation specialist, Nima, who can talk a little bit more about how smart bidding with store visits works.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. So I'm just gonna jump right into it and start by maybe going through like why smart bidding, why does it make sense, and why does it make sense with store visits. The way to think about smart bidding is really that we, like, for the first time in a very long time, we have so much data available to us and so many signals we can use when we set the bids that it doesn't really make sense anymore to put in manual biddings, and it's almost impossible, if not impossible, to be able to set the manual bids in a way that is efficient, and that's really where smart bidding kicks in, because we're looking at all the different signals every time a query happens on Google. So every time someone types in something, whether it be shoes or, I don't know, a dress for a party, we take in all these signals into account in real time. So just to name a few examples, we look at what device is being used, does the actual query say, the location, the time of day, the operating system, the creative, and the browser, and many other signals. And what we do is that we look at those signals, all of the signals we have available, and then we try to predict how likely is this user to convert, and how likely is this user to spend a certain amount of money. And we do that by using advanced machine learning that drives informed and accurate bidding decisions. So really what this is about is optimization in real time, and that's why smart bidding runs so well together with store visits, because we need to figure out like how likely are people who are searching actually, how likely are they ending up at a local store making a purchase. To go a little bit into the nitty-gritty, as I mentioned before, we use a lot of different signals. So here's an example. Like you can imagine back in the days or previously where manual bidding was dominating, you set one manual bid for a keyword and then it was running. So we didn't take into account like who was the person, like what was the context, what was the intent. But now when we have all of these different signals to choose from, and we're setting the bids through automated bidding or smart bidding as we call it, we can kind of estimate and predict how a certain user's search will perform. So in the example you see on the screen right now, you can see that for a Nexus tablet at 4:36 p.m. Using Firefox with a misspelling in the word in the query at a location that is called Ringleyville, we set a higher bid, and then for another query that is the same from a desktop at 7 p.m. in Phoenix, we set a lower query. And the reason why we do that is because we're using all these signals, not only the ones that are on the screen right now, to actually make a prediction on how likely is this person to convert. And doing that, we actually set way more efficient bids, and we're able to bid low or bid high, depending on whether or not the user is likely to convert. So this is a way more efficient way to bid, and that's why we're calling it fully automated smart bidding, because it is fully automated. It does that in real time every time someone searches on something on Google. And the important thing to take into account here is that we're now also able to do that with offline conversions. So historically it's been used mostly for online conversions, but now we're also able to predict what is the probability that someone will go down to the store and make a purchase. And if we look at that, we have to think about the customer journey. And if you look, you can see like in the case on the right side, within 3 days after a click, someone orders something online, and then what the smart bidding is doing is actually predicting how likely is that person to make that action. And as another example, you can see we are trying to predict like what is the probability that someone that's clicked on an ad is actually going to go down to the store and make a purchase. And we're gonna go way more in depth on how that actually happens and how to measure it and set up that. But really, I think it's a beautiful thing that we are able to measure both what's happened online and offline, and that we're able to use the technology available through smart bidding to optimize towards the bids and setting them in a competitive manner and an efficiently manner to optimize for the most conversion, whether they are online or whether they're offline. So 2 or 3 of the solutions we have available is Target CPA, which is optimizing for cost per acquisition. And another one is maximum conversions, which is optimizing for getting the most conversions for your current budget. And what we see on search is if you use these smart bidding strategies, you get up to 31% more conversions. And I think that's worth taking note on. So if you're thinking about, or if you're already using store visits in your marketing setup, you can definitely benefit from switching to smart bidding. And the same thing with target ROAS, we see up to 35% increase in conversion value when you use target ROAS. So I would say target ROAS, and I don't know about you, Katharina, target ROAS is like a gift for omnichannel bidding. It's really helpful.
Absolutely. I think most of the retailers are, omnichannel retailers are super excited about this.
So to mention one of the retailers who's been super excited about it is Decathlon, who use smart bidding with store visits to optimize for sales and return on investment. And what they saw was that they got a 95% increase in omnichannel ROAS and 17% increase in conversion rate after using smart bidding. So it's definitely worth using. And yeah, if you're as excited about it as we are, I think it's only natural to move on to the next step, which is how to get started.
Perfect. So first of all, it's important to choose the right bid strategy for your business. As Nima already mentioned, we have different smart bidding solutions which you can apply. So either you have target ROAS, this really makes sense for retailers, or you have a target CPA or maximum conversion strategy. And this is more for interesting for example, supermarkets, where their main KPI would be store visits. So really think about what makes sense for my business and then decide on what bidding strategy you want to apply. Then it's important to set your conversion value as well as window. So in order to measure your offline revenue, you need to give a value to your store visit. And this is a formula you can use to actually calculate your store visit value. So let's say that 1 in 4 customers who visit your store make a purchase. That means that the in-store purchase rate would be 25%. And then let's say that that person who buys something on average of 400 euros, then your average order value is 400 euros. So in that way you can actually calculate that your store visit conversion value would be 100 euros. So in this way you can calculate the offline revenue. I'm gonna discuss how to do this within Google Ads as well as within Search Ads 360, because there is a little bit of a difference there. So within Google Ads, you set your store visit conversion value at the conversion pixel level, which means that for every single campaign you will have the same store visit value. So it's really an average. Well, for Google Ads 360, and I will show that later in a slide as well, you actually have the opportunity to change the formula of the store visits value for different campaigns. But I will show that a little bit later. But first of all, Google Ads, you start off with setting your store visit value at the conversion pixel level of store visits. And then afterwards you can set your conversion window. The default window for store visits is 30 days. However, for if you want to utilize smart bidding, including store visit data, we actually recommend to change this to a 1 week period. Not only because performance can then be evaluated more quickly, but also it will allow the bidding system to be more reactive to changes in user behavior. Of course, let's say you are a business with a longer conversion window, such as an auto dealership, then you can keep the conversion window to a 30-day period. But then keep in mind, when using a 30-day window, it will take longer after implementation to optimize the performance of smart bidding with store visits. So if possible, reduce the window. On average, I see that the clients who use this in the beta phase set the window between like 10 and 7 and 10 days. But then actually it's very important that you understand your conversion lag. You want to know, okay, I'm measuring my store visits at the moment with a 30-day window. What percentage of my store visits are being measured after those 7 days? Because of course, if you change your conversion window from 30 days to 7 days, you will also start to track less store visits, because you will only track the store visits which are happening within a 7-day window. So that is important. You can see this information by segmenting your campaigns. So you go to segment, then to conversions, and then to days to conversion. And then you can see what percentage of the people actually come in within that 7-day period. And then for Search Ads 360. So for Search Ads 360, you actually have the opportunity to work with an Omnichannel KPI formula per campaign level. So let's say you have an umbrella campaign versus a TV screen campaign. Of course, there are different values to the store visits, and therefore you're also able to set that differently and have a different formula running for those campaigns. So that is a little bit more advanced than that you can use within Google Ads, because then you work with an average across all your campaigns. So now I will hand it over to Nima again, who will talk about how to evaluate the performance of this bid strategy.
And maybe in the meantime as well, if there's anyone who has a question at the moment, please feel free to post your question below the video, and we'll make sure to answer it as well during this session.
Great. Okay, evaluating performance. So Katharina and I work with a lot of clients across Europe. So we see a lot of things, and we see things that work well, and we see things that doesn't work that well. So what we've done here is we're just gonna start off by showing 6 of the most common pitfalls, so you don't have to do them yourself, but that you can learn from these and avoid falling into them. So let's get started. The first one is using an unrealistic CPA or ROAS goal. I think this is not only something that's relevant for Omnichannel, but also in general in everything we do in online marketing. We need to make sure that we always set a competitive bid. So what we recommend is that before you set your targets and your ROAS goal, that you just start by looking at historical data. I would look at the last 30 to 60 days, depending if there's any seasonality that should be outlined in the graph as well. But the best way to start is to look at the past and see what have we used as targets before, and then use that as like some kind of directional guidance on what should we use going forward if you're creating new campaigns. So I think that's straightforward, but we do see sometimes that if you put in unrealistic goals, the campaigns and the setup can have some issues getting up and running. So let's make sure that it gets off the ground in a nice way. The next thing is analyzing performance when the strategy is still in the learning period. And what does that really mean? When we're using smart bidding, it needs some time to learn. So it's gonna throw in a lot of different ads, and it's gonna evaluate the performance and to figure out like which users react best to certain messages and so forth, and how should it set the bids. It's really no different than if a human was doing it. Like if you're looking at the campaigns and evaluating, it takes some time before you analyze what's going on in the beginning until you know which buttons to click on and where to switch things. So it's no different with machine learning. That doesn't mean that you get bad performance, you just get a bit of fluctuating results in the beginning. So what the best advice I can give you is be patient, remember the conversion window, and give the strategy at least a week to ramp up. So yeah, I think that's very important. Patience is important. The next thing that follows the second thing is overlooking high conversion delay when analyzing performance. We already spoke a bit, both Katharina and I, about this conversion window and conversion delay. And what it really means is if there's a certain amount of time that goes by from a click to a conversion happens, we need to understand that. We need to take that into account when we're looking at a week or a month or whatever date range we're looking at, that there are conversions that are missing that will be backfilled once they happen. So take that into account. Make sure that you know what your conversion delay is, and make sure that when you're measuring, if you're measuring up until yesterday, you might be missing out on conversions, and you might make decisions that aren't necessarily the right ones because that is missing from the equation. The fourth one is looking at the wrong metrics. So when you look at the omnichannel ROAS, and I'd love to give you your opinion on this as well, it's important to look at both at the same time. Do you want to elaborate a bit on why that's important?
Yeah, so it's when you start to activate omnichannel ROAS bidding, the system will actually optimize towards total sales. So it doesn't really matter whether this sale happens online or whether it happens within the store. It just optimizes towards both. So it's very important that you don't start to analyze, is my store visit rate increasing or decreasing, or is my online conversion decreasing or decreasing, because the system will really optimize towards an omnichannel return on ad spend. So it's important that you also look at that and see if your total sales over time or your total ROAS over time is increasing when you activate this algorithm.
Fantastic. It's good to know. The next one is campaign is budget constrained. So in order to run at full performance, it's best that the campaigns are not budget restraints. But if you are in a situation where the campaigns are constrained and you can remove those constraints, then our clear recommendation is to run with maximize conversion value or maximize conversion, depending on whether value or the number of conversion is most important. Because in this case, we'll just make sure that you get as many conversion or as much conversion value as possible within the budget you have available. And so the best thing here is, of course, to remove the constraints, but if you know beforehand that you're already running with limited campaigns, then choose the bid strategy that makes most sense for you and your business. And the last thing is something that I'm guilty of myself sometimes. So if you're not patient enough, you might make constant changes to campaigns. And what does constant mean? Well, most importantly, using smart bidding doesn't mean that you can make changes, and it doesn't mean that you can change the target as well. But you need to be careful about how you go about it. So as I mentioned in the beginning, the learning period is the phase where the algorithm is learning. And as we also discussed, it might be too soon to even evaluate the results from the first week. So the best practice is set the targets competitively, let it run, don't make changes, even though it might look like that the CPA is high or the ROAS is not hitting its target. Remember, there's a lot of conversion and a lot of conversion value that is still missing and haven't been reported yet. So constrain, patience, don't make too many changes. And if you do make too many changes, what you have to understand is in the learning period, the algorithm is really ramping up, getting to know your account and all the external signals. So if you, let's have an example, if you change it by 50%, the CPA, right? That is a completely different scenario that it has to work from. So you might postpone or prolong the learning period as well. So be patient, don't make too many changes. And that doesn't mean you can still change the targets if you want to do that. Do it after the learning period and do it gradually. Don't do anything extreme. It's more or less applying the same way of working as with manual bidding. We wouldn't change it from €1 to €100 and expect the performance to be normal or gradually changing. That will create huge fluctuations. It's no different with smart bidding. If you change the targets too drastically, you will see fluctuations. It will go back to learning mode, because it's a completely different scenario. So, to make a long story short, make sure you evaluate your campaigns correctly. The conversion lag is important. Set the targets correctly. Look at the right metrics, as Katharina also mentioned. Make sure that the budgets are not constrained on the campaigns where you're running, and avoid making constant changes. As I mentioned, you can make changes, but just avoid making constant significant changes, especially in the learning period. If you do that, you're off to the best possible start, and everything should hopefully go smoothly and well. And that brings us to the last part. So evaluating or avoiding things is of course important, but also the insights understanding what's going on under the hood is also possible with smart bidding. If you haven't already seen the bid strategy report, I strongly encourage you to check it out and see what's going on once you apply smart bidding. The bid strategy report is simply like an interface in Google Ads on SA360. Well, you get some insights to what's going on under the hood. So at the screenshot you're looking at now, you can see in the time period selected, what have the smart bidding algorithm optimized toward? What is the target that is optimized towards? And this target can of course change depending on how often or how frequently you change the target. Next to it, you'll see the actual goal or the actual target it's been hitting. So in this case, you can see that it's been optimized towards 2,700 ROAS, and it's been hitting 2,500 ROAS, right? And this might mean, okay, we are a bit under the ROAS, but the graph underneath is a great example of why you should look more into the numbers than just look at those two metrics. Because the graph underneath shows you, if you look at the x-axis, the axis underneath, you can see some colors during the date period. Some of them are yellow, some of them are gray, and one of them is blue. And the yellow one is a warning. So when you're inside the bid strategy, it's actually a way for you to be up to speed of like what's going on. So the yellow one is a warning. That could be like maybe you've been budget constrained and that has impacted the performance. And the gray one is the learning period. So maybe there's been a learning period, maybe you changed the bids too drastically and it went back to learning period again, or it could be a numerous of reasons. And the blue one is fantastic because that's the conversion delay, and it's important to use that the right way. So in this case, we might be a little below the ROAS target, but as you can see in the period that we're evaluating, the blue line indicates in this period there's plenty of conversions and conversion value that haven't been reported yet due to the conversion lag. So if you've already been inside of it and you're already using it, way to go. That's the right way to evaluate performance. That's the right way to think about smart bidding and how different things can impact the performance. If you haven't been inside of it already, I recommend to have a look. If you have campaigns running with smart bidding, you can go in and you can actually see now for a given period how it's performing. And if you're planning on turning it on, as soon as you turn it on, you'll have the bid strategy available, and most likely it'll just say the algorithm is in learning period, but when you revisit the report, it will give you some nice insights about like what's going on and what can you do to improve things. So I can only strongly recommend using this report. It's extremely helpful to understand what's going on. What we want to avoid, of course, is just looking at the CPA and ROAS and then making decisions without knowing which variables are actually impacting the current performance.
Yeah, I personally really like this report, and I feel not a lot of people actually know about it, so it's a good mention that this is around.
Yeah. And if you have any troubles finding the report, you can just write bid strategy report Google Ads support help, and we have an excellent support article that can show you the way to the gold. And with that said, we just want to finish off by saying if you want to get under the tree, you need an omnichannel strategy. Sverre?
Yeah, perfect. Thank you very much, Katarina and Nima, for walking us through the content and to end with this fantastic little rhyme as well, of course. Before we move into the Q&A part of this session, for the people who are viewing, please be aware that on the right-hand side of your screen, and I'm pointing it the right way, the right-hand side of your screen, there's going to be a feedback box. So please leave any feedback you have there for us. We can use it to improve these sessions. And then we're going to move into the Q&A part. So if you have any questions, please feel free to drop them down below, and our specialists will reply to your questions live. And over here, we'll get started with some of the questions that we've received. And so let's dive into those. So the first question we got is, can I only use store visit smart bidding for certain campaigns?
No, you can actually use it for campaigns as well, with campaign level conversions. And how that works is you simply you select a few campaigns where you'd like to add it, and then you go inside the campaign settings and you add that as an additional conversion. And then it will only be measuring the store visit inside of those conversions. So campaign level conversions is the answer for this question, yeah.
Clear. Right, so the second question we got is, can I use JSON experiments to test store visits target ROAS?
Absolutely. If you want to compare whether optimizing towards an omnichannel KPI works better with our automatic bidding solutions versus manual bidding, you can use drafts and experiments. For search, you can do this immediately. It's in the Google Ads interface. For shopping, however, we need to activate this from our backend. So please reach out to your Google representative and ask if they can activate drafts and experiments for shopping.
All right, so you can, but for shopping, reach out to your Google representative. All right. Going on to the next question. So what is actually the best practice around campaign setup for this?
Yeah, so very good question as well. It's very important that we have enough data input into our algorithms. So if you have a very granular campaign, we might not have enough data input for the algorithm to work well. So we actually recommend to have consolidated campaigns with enough volume, with enough data for the algorithm to perform best. Do you want to add something there as an automation specialist?
I think it's a really good question as well, and I think you covered the most important part. It is simply that without any data or with very limited data, there's also very limited headroom for automation to work. So if you can, and if it's possible, and hopefully it is, consolidate as much as possible where it makes sense, because that's really where we see the best performance. So I just want to echo what Katharina said: consolidate, make sure there's plenty of data, and the smart bidding will take care of the performance.
All right, perfect, makes sense. Yeah. And then the next question is, how can I see how the bid strategies are performing? And I think we've seen that towards the end of the presentation, right?
Yeah, it's still a good question, because as you also mentioned, not everyone knows about the bid strategy report. Mm-hmm. It's still relatively new, and new features are being added to it over time. So go inside Google Ads or SA360 and look at campaign level, and it's actually located to the right, and you'll have a bid strategy as a link. You click on that link and you arrive at the bid strategy report. I myself wasn't fully aware of this feature before I joined Google, and it's still relatively new, so I don't expect everyone to know about the bid strategy report. And if you're having any difficulties finding it, I recommend just going to our support article center, search for bid strategy report, and there'll be screenshots and guides and direction on how to find it, but also how to use it, as we mentioned earlier on.
All right, so bid strategy reports are the answer for this one.
Yes.
Yeah. Again, thank you very much, Nima, Katharina, for guiding us through the content of today, Omnichannel bidding. We'll stick around for a bit until the end of the hour to answer your questions. So if you have any questions, please submit them down below, and we'll reply to those questions right now. If you want to see more episodes like these, then please check out this channel, or please check out the on-demand platform for more like this. Thank you very much, and have a great day.
Bye-bye.